there are many books that dealt with the partition of India and two-nation theory. So what is something new that the readers can get from reading your book? And what, according to you, was the necessity or origin of the two-nation theory?
Am I audible? Yeah. Before I proceed, kudos to the Vande Mataram group. The last time I was here, 2017, I think we were struggling to find people to fill the chairs, and you've come a long way from there. So fantastic work, and I think it's independent of anybody who's come here, it's your persistence. So fantastic work. And I think the dress code is conspiracy. What is it that makes this book different? So I'll have to recollect what I told the publisher is the US book. See, you'll find multiple books which touch upon the different verticals of this book. So each of the sections you're bound to find books which have dedicated themselves to the exploration of each of these verticals to a significant depth. And that has helped my cause. So for instance, I have relied upon a lot of PhD theses, right from the founding of the Congress as an establishment. Is that a problem? Yeah. So I had the comfort of referring to a lot of PhD theses. Perhaps the better way of looking at it, of course I'm not saying that I've got it all right, is that people were looking at different parts of the elephant and I was trying to look at the elephant in the room, literally and metaphorically speaking in that particular sense. The idea was to say that as a constitutional lawyer we are taught to read the Constitution or to understand the Constitution in a particular sense, with history unfortunately playing a very little role in our understanding of the legalese. Assume for a moment that you still make sense of the legalese in the language. What triggered a particular thought, or what is the politico-theology that influenced a particular outcome, is rarely discussed in law schools. Having been a product of a law school and also having taught in quite a few law schools, I know for a fact that this is never featured as part of the pedagogy of constitutional law. And surprisingly so, because it's not as if political science is not taught to law students. It's not as if history is not taught to law students. It's not as if politico-economics is not taught to law students. But when it comes to the Constitution, somehow the need to bring it all together is not felt. So that's one. And second, on the issue of partition and let's say the Constitution itself, I would, as someone with a fair degree of common sense, would ask myself, wouldn't partition or shouldn't partition have influenced the manner in which the Constitution was drafted, given that it was such a painful surgery? And I would say avoidable, not for reasons that people think I would say so, avoidable for a very different reason altogether. And therefore, if it did not influence the framing of the Constitution, then would it not be a fair assessment to say that the framers of the Constitution did huge injustice to their mandate, that they did not draw the lessons that they were supposed to from the partition? But I could not have, or I cannot ask those questions or answer those questions until I go to the roots. And I have not asked those questions yet because the book still doesn't touch the timeline of 46 to 50. So it's still a premature question to ask because I'm still looking at the material on that subject. So for all practical purposes, I'm looking at the origins. So to compare it to the first book looks at the Western European Christian line. The second book necessarily looks at the journey of the Muslim line as well as the Christian line and how they merge. And you'll have to tell me if there are any politically correct free speech filters that I'm supposed to apply during the course of this. If there are, you please let me know, hand me a glossary and I'll stick to that. Okay. Otherwise, I will go the way I usually do. And considering that humanities have been introduced as part of IITs, I assume that free speech must be expanded. You can't limit yourself, right? You can't limit yourself only to the engineer's comfort zone. As a product of that first guinea pig experiment of the law school set up in 2006, I'm in some position to say what exactly was the intent behind the introduction of the humanities. It's just that I turned out to be the counterproductive effect of that intention. Okay. So, therefore, according to me, the entire goal has been to look at it largely from the perspective of facts. The two books in this regard that I have certainly referred to significantly, apart from several others, is of course Dr. Ambedkar's Pakistan, the Partition of India. But according to me, the better researched book was is Venkat Dhulipala's Creating a New Medina. The difference is his book starts from 1937, and therefore it almost assumes the two-nation theory was a reality by 1937, and how it was given effect to by 1946 is what he's looking at. But the religious underpinnings, the ethno-religious underpinnings, its direct connection to the fall of the Mughal Empire is something that he does not touch upon. I'm not saying that's a drawback. I'm simply saying that is the limited scope of his book. I just decided to go a bit more, let's say, back in time. And fortunately for me, the literature helped me, or it vindicated my search in giving the material that said two-nation theory is not Jinnah's brainchild. Two-nation theory is not Syed Ahmad Khan's brainchild. It goes much beyond, it goes much deeper. And that learning I felt needed to be shared with the material. And if this was the case, I then had to ask myself, is it purely a matter of coincidence that the very same thought finds resonance and purchase let's say across time spans? Or is there a clear movement here where all of them are products of some institutions? Fortunately, which a fact that I did not know until I started researching for the book was that Syed Ahmad Khan was a product of the founder of the two-nation theory, which is Sayyid Waliullah Dehlavi, or rather Shah Waliullah Dehlavi. And that seminary has produced all the leading movements of that particular period. Was a revelation to me. There's a chance that people were aware before. So obviously there are certain books that have spoken on that. But how that directly ties into the factum of partition needed a better treatment. So in that sense, I'd say I've been less a student of law and more a student of history in the writing of this book. I've been a greater student of political science in the writing of the first book. Hopefully, I'll have to combine political science and constitution and history in the third book better. The last book will of course be the final nail in the coffin, which is the book on the constitution itself, the fourth book. That is more or less the lay of the land for the now transformed tetralogy, no more a trilogy.